talking about Katie Hopkins.
The hatred, the intolerance. They lie about how we should be vegan.
There was no real evidence, no real substance to it.
You can reverse heart disease, you can reverse diabetes. I think it's quite overwhelming, the evidence.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Chidi Ngwaba.
One of the world's premier lifestyle doctors.
Meat, milk, sugar, all of those things are detrimental to our health.
People addicted to them.
Why don't we teach this more? Evidence has shown us from years ago that just by changing your diet into a healthy plant-based diet, those arteries that were closing down can now open up.
What you're exposing is something deeper than even this issue. We need to wake up.
500,000 of us will have a heart attack in this country alone.
It doesn't matter what drug I give you, there will always be a side effect.
There must be more that we can do.
So thank you very much for being here. It's just so great to talk.
Well, lovely to have you here in my home.
I've seen you in places before online. You've kind of popped up here and there, most notably recently at the University of Oxford. The video went viral. I thought I have to meet this guy. So Dr. Chidi, please introduce yourself.
Well, hello, my name's Dr. Chidi. I am a lifestyle physician. What does that mean? It means I help to really reverse and prevent many of the big lifestyle diseases. I have been doing this for well over 25 years. I include speaking around the world on this matter, set up restaurants, do TV, lots of publications in magazines and newspapers all over the world. But my whole passion is to help people stay healthy using a healthy plant-based diet.
How did you get into the plant-based community?
Interesting. I think I was born into it. I was raised by a Seventh-day Adventist family. For those of you who don't know, that's a Christian faith. But one of its main proponents was a man named Dr. Kellogg. Dr. Kellogg of Kellogg's Cornflakes fame. He was a fantastic proponent of really stopping and reversing disease back in the 1800s. And I used to read about him, and I thought, well, you know what he's doing, I wonder if we can do that today. And that's what I decided to do. I went into medicine, and I ended up pretty much doing the same thing, but in a different sphere, maybe.
Let's talk about the blue zones. This is something that is gaining popularity on Netflix around the world.
I actually do a lot of work in one of the blue zones. So Loma Linda, California, it is the only blue zone in North America. Again, a heavily Seventh-day Adventist atmosphere, the university, the culture there. And you see people there who are in their late 90s, over 100, walking around healthy and strong. But I go there and I talk to the universities, I talk to the communities about how this plant-based diet really helps to keep them where they are. And it's not just the diet, it's the whole lifestyle. So it's the exercise, it's the taking of rest, it's the charitable acts, all of those things together produce this fantastic lifestyle. And when you go to Loma Linda, for example, it is a blue zone, but just over the main highway, you have some of the most unhealthy people in America.
Lifestyle medicine, as you just said, there's lots of different components, but what's your specific passion?
Yeah, my passion is always preventing and reversing disease. That's the thing that continues to excite me. I've been doing it for over 25 years, but I must say, every time we see somebody who's reversed their diabetes or their blood pressure has gone away, it's an absolute, it feels like a miracle to me. So I spend pretty much all of my time in medicine reversing disease or helping people stay healthy to prevent disease. It's a small branch, but hopefully an expanding branch of lifestyle medicine.
So I've looked at the data, and from what I can see, there's 3 chronic diseases that can be clinically reversed with a plant-based diet. Number 1, heart disease. Number 2, type 2 diabetes. And number 3, early stage prostate cancer. I guess then obviously you can reverse high blood pressure and things like that, so I haven't really included those.
Yes.
Are there any others that you've encountered, and perhaps if you have a story, that'd be great.
Well, when I qualified and got into lifestyle medicine, I realised that, hey, there's a lot to do with diet, vitamins that can help reverse autoimmune diseases. So autoimmune diseases, that's when the antibodies start to attack any part of your body. There's over 400 different ones. So what I discovered was that by reducing or eliminating things like milk from the diet, because that really potentiates most autoimmunity problems, you can lead to actually a reversal, a beginning of a reversal of autoimmune diseases. So yeah, that's one that I tend to spend a lot of time on also.
Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease, but you can't reverse type 1 diabetes. You can reverse type 2 diabetes, right?
You would think that. You would think that. But I have found I have reversed 50% of the type 1 diabetics that come to me. About 50%. Now you might say, well, how on earth is that possible? Because type 1 diabetes is when the pancreas is destroyed. But the interesting thing is that when somebody's first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, not all of their pancreas is gone. And even the clinicians will say, well, you know, you're in this halfway house period. Well, at that point, if you change their lifestyle, getting to a heavy plant-based diet regime, you can stop the rest of the pancreas from being destroyed, and the type 1 diabetes can be reversed and stopped. So, but if it's already totally destroyed, there's nothing you can do. So roughly about a 50% success rate.
With whole food, plant-based.
Whole food, plant-based, removing things like milk from the diet, absolutely.
I can tell there's probably going to be some pushback in the comments
Sure.
to your statement. So what do you say to those people?
When I started talking about type 2 diabetes many years ago, there was pushback. It was impossible. Okay, we're all aware that it's possible now. If you have any doubts about it, well, come and see my patients. You can't deny it. These people, young guy, the first person I did was a young chap, 21-year-old bodybuilder, miserable out of his life simply because he could not do what he wanted to do. So we put him on a strict diet regime, never needed any insulin. He's absolutely fine.
If I were to ask you to pick the sort of most extreme afflicted person and how they've transformed their life on a plant-based diet, who would you choose?
Yes, there's a wonderful lady a few years ago who had hyperthyroidism, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and was overweight. Within 2 months, she was off all of her medication and she had reversed all of her diseases and had lost most of the weight. And that was simply based on a healthy plant-based diet, decent exercise regime, and of course, managing her stress. All of those things together. I mean, that was a wonderful result. I've had similar people with multiple illnesses, but that one always sticks out to me.
How long have you been doing this?
25 years.
Where have you been? Because you've done so much off camera. You talk about the plant-based cafes you've set up. I saw at the University of Oxford, where of course that one went completely viral, but you go around the world speaking.
Yes.
I'm so used to this community, kind of see the same people at the same events, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to meet you, because you're not on social media. Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, it's a good question. I like to get on with the work. A lot of the things that you have to do have to be thought about, studied, researched, away from camera. You know, you want to make it how it should be before you display it to the world. But also, you know, I've not been a great fan of being on Instagram and showing off and telling everybody what I'm doing. I'm more about just getting on with the work. I do see that there is a need for publicity, which is why I'm doing this with you, and I'm happy to do more in the future. But really, I've just been working.
How have you seen the plant-based movement, the community, this lifestyle medicine movement kind of transform and develop?
Yeah, well, in the beginning when I started, there was nothing going on, really. I mean, we had some excellent scientists and doctors who were doing great work, absolutely, but there wasn't much of a community. So I'm pleased to say that slowly, more and more doctors, more and more medical people or health and wellness people have got involved. I spend a lot of my time in the early stages because we set up the European Society of Lifestyle Medicine, and we reached thousands of doctors, and that's well over 10 years ago. But I'm so glad to see so many more people taking it on as normal now, whereas before it was a bit of a, is this quackery? I mean, is it real science? But no, it's growing. I think what needs to happen in the future is for many of our disparate organisations to kind of come together at least annually and celebrate each other, promote each other. Let's not have any friction between each other. Let's understand that there is a greater goal out there. The goal is to help people stay healthy, to sustain and to protect people, the planet, the animals, all of those things together.
Let's talk about the keto carnivore diet, because you mentioned earlier that lifestyle medicine is kind of should be one community. But I think one of the issues is that kind of battle lines have been drawn between the plant-based community and the kind of low carb ketogenic community, which used to be paleo, it used to be keto. It's now morphed into carnivore diet.
Sure.
I think we can all agree shifting away from processed food is really good. But when you've got a situation where people are saying high carb is optimal and then other people saying low carb is optimal, it's so divisive, isn't it?
It is divisive, but I'm a person who does like to bring people together as much as we can. And as you said, we can all agree that processed food is not for us. All of us agree on that. Now, our different philosophies will take us down different roads as to which way we go. I am 100% convinced, and pretty much very difficult to change my mind now, that we are designed, I'll use those words, our bodies are literally designed for a plant-based diet. And here's something else that happens in my practice. If I cure someone from diabetes, they will say to me, Dr. Chidi, I'm happy that I'm cured. But also, I used to have a bit of acid reflux, that's gone. I used to have a few joint pains, those have gone. The point that comes out is that these plant-based diets they're at the core of healing, they actually don't just deal with the issue at hand, they deal with every aspect of your body. Yeah, it makes yourself look younger, healthier, your skin improves, all of those things. And I believe if you're on a healthy diet, that should be the case. It should be healthy for every part of your body. Some of these other diets, which are heavy in the meat and the dairy, okay, they may help you reverse type 2 diabetes, but they may cause heart disease, they may cause kidney stones, for me, it's a bit like taking medication. Okay, you take medication, it helps you in one area, but it has a side effect. I believe a healthy lifestyle, a well-being lifestyle, must help every area of your body. That is my judgment on things, and I'm happy to continue the way I am.
Not just every area, every part of your body, but also every part of society, right? So you've got the health, the environment, animals. They're the three things most people draw on when they think about shifting towards a plant-based diet. Is there any other pull that kind of brings you into believing that a plant-based diet is really what we're designed to eat?
Well, I mean, obviously I come from a faith background, and even when you go to the first book of the Bible, when Adam and Eve were put in the Garden of Eden, they were given plants to eat. I believe we were designed by a God who knows what our body needs. So he gave us the fruit, the vegetable. It's so amazing that all the fruit, all the vegetables, all the beans, all the grains are perfectly designed for our bodies. It doesn't matter what drug I give you, there will always be a side effect. But the apple, the orange, the banana, the nut is just perfectly designed for us with no side effects. But we've just come through a pandemic. What's the origins of all of these pandemics? I mean, it doesn't matter if it's flu, COVID, whatever. It starts with animals, the way we farm them and the way we eat them. That's not a coincidence. They're not coming from your local bean sprout plant. They come from animals. I mean, we need to wake up to what's going on in the world.
And there's such a blind spot when it comes to pandemics. There's such a blind spot when it comes to personal health, public health, environmentalism. What's going on here? Why are we as a society so fixated on not seeing the big picture?
It's a very good observation, and I can look at it from one way. Let's just look at medics, how we were taught as doctors. We are only taught, this is the disease, this is the medication for the disease. If that doesn't work, we'll give you more medication, and if that doesn't work, it's surgery. That's modern medicine. I have always thought that is totally inadequate. We've never focused on, I wonder if we can heal people totally from disease. Now, there are many reasons for that. I mean, we can go into the history of it and the history of modern medicine and how certain individuals who were more interested in making profits from petrochemicals and drugs started to sponsor many of our medical schools. But I won't go there. But what's more important is that there is this evidence available to us today that healing is possible. And I know people don't make so much money out of healing. It's much more profitable to make money out of treating. Keep people in treatment for the rest of their lives, a bit like a drug dealer. You don't want your customer to die because they won't give you any money. But also you don't want them to be happy and healthy because they never come back to you for drugs. So we've got this industry that's just keeping us in this perpetual motion of drugs, hospital appointments, surgery. The answer is cheap. The answer doesn't make people billionaires, but it's cheap and it's more empowering for the individual. So when you talk about, is there something going on? Definitely. In the early days of my talks, I was offered loads of money, quite a lot of money, to not talk about dairy things by the dairy industry.
The irony.
When the facts are there, it's very difficult to argue. Very difficult to argue that meat, milk, sugar, all of those things are detrimental to our health.
People addicted to them?
Yeah, well, in terms of sugar, definitely addicted. I mean, the pathways for addiction for heroin are the same as the pathways of addiction for sugar. And so I have a lot of sympathy with people who are trying to give up those habits. And they need compassion, they need sympathy, and they need help rather than ridicule. So, but the fact is, they're there. Those addictions are there. And you mix them all together, it forms this. I don't know if you've seen this experiment where they had these mice and they gave them as much sugar as they wanted. And the mice didn't get overweight, they just took the sugar they wanted. They gave them as much fat as they wanted, same thing. But when they mixed the sugar and fat together, very difficult for the mice to stop eating. And many of the things that are addictive to us are that combination of sugar and fat, biscuits, chocolates, all of those sorts of things. So, yeah, I have to help people overcome those addictions.
Let's talk about public speaking.
Okay.
Let's talk about University of Oxford.
Okay.
Late 2023.
Yes.
How was that?
It was a remarkable experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I mean, it seems that our bodies were designed for all of this fresh fruit, vegetables, whole grain produce. It's perfectly designed for our bodies.
They lie. Death is what happens to you when you're a vegan.
Look, I think it's quite overwhelming, the evidence. Thousands of research papers.
Please, would you? Oh, my days. Banging on about how we should be vegan.
By lowering your animal product intake, you can almost bulletproof yourself from certain cancers.
They hate themselves so much, they will only suck on quinoa for sustenance.
Obviously, we won the debate in the end, obviously. And what I really enjoyed is, because we had three speakers, and one spoke about the actual humanitarian side of plant-based, the other one spoke about the planet side, and then I spoke about the health. And we made convincing, cogent arguments. The opposing side, they spent a lot of time sort of criticising us and coming up with jokes, which is fine, but there was no real evidence, no real substance to it. And I tend to find that is how it is in life. What you must do is just present the facts, in an entertaining, engaging way, but present the facts nonetheless. And we won the debate. I guess when you were at the University of Oxford, surrounded by people who were pretty open to plant-based stuff, you could expect us to win.
What do you think about Katie Hopkins? Would you say she's misinformed or a lack of integrity?
No, that's a very close question. Thank you very much. Look, personally, I'll be honest, I may shock you personally, I quite like her. I think she's... I had dinner with her beforehand. She didn't enjoy her aubergine, but, we had a healthy conversation beforehand. But I think she was just there for entertainment. I mean, there was no real substance to what she had to say. It was just, a lot of criticism. And
Shooting from the hip.
Exactly right.
I feel like lots of people, certainly like when you go down to the pub and you hear people speak, like they play into some of the tactics and things she subscribes to. It's almost like they don't want to think about these issues, so then they shoot the messenger.
I think what you're exposing is something deeper than even this issue. And as I say, I like to try to bring people together, but the things that get in the way is when you have opposing views, and rather than addressing the issue, we start these ad hominem attacks, these, playing the man rather than the ball. And what that does, it just closes down the argument. So, for example, if somebody doesn't believe what you believe, you give them a label, therefore I don't need to listen to you. And look, from where I sit, I don't care what your views are. I'm interested in listening to why you believe that. Rather than me just dismissing you and labeling you, I want to understand you. Because even if we don't agree, I often say to people, look, even if we don't have a middle ground, there's always common ground. You know, there are wars going on all over the world at the moment. The one thing we can agree on is that we don't want innocent people to die. I mean, even when you're that much opposed to each other, there's always some common ground. That's what I'm always looking for. We can never change people's minds unless we have some common ground and we understand that, hey, you've got a different position to me. You're an intelligent individual. You have a mind of your own. I want to understand why you've come to that point of view. We cannot progress unless we take that attitude.
So what would you say are the biggest myths when it comes to lifestyle medicine, specifically plant-based nutrition?
Well, B12 is a big one, and I often get asked that. When I do public talks, I often like to open it up to the audience to ask questions. And one of the biggest questions is always B12. How could you purport plant-based diet and, you know, everybody's going to be B12 deficient? Well, one of the first questions I asked is, well, when you have that slab of steak in front of you, everybody knows it's full of B12. Where does it come from? Where does the B12 come from? Now, some people who know about farming may know that, well, they inject some of these cows with B12, but ordinarily, meat has B12. Where does it come from? And the answer is, it comes from the bacteria producing B12 in the gut, which then goes into the tissues. That's pretty much the same of us. You know, we produce B12 ourselves. Our gut microbiome, if we have a healthy diet, will produce enough B12. We only need minuscule amounts. But there is the risk, before anybody goes off and says, well, I don't need to take anything, there is the risk that some of us do not make B12 as well as everybody else. There's many issues that can cause that, even autoimmune issues can cause that. So I recommend that everybody takes a B12 supplement, especially people who have a meat diet, because people on a meat diet are B12 deficient as well. In fact, I often do experiments on myself for several years. I'd say, okay, well, I won't take a B12 supplement for a while. I'll monitor myself. After several years, my B12 is still the same. So obviously my gut bacteria is doing what it's supposed to do. I do think, though, just to be safe, people should take a B12 supplement.
Protein?
Protein. Oh, protein. I mean, plant-based people have better protein than anybody. So I started my career as an orthopedic surgeon. And I remember those professors of orthopedics, they would say to their patients, okay, you've had your hip replacement now, get your cheese in, get your milk in, you know, build up those strong bones. Utterly nonsense, utterly nonsense. I mean, it's the complete reverse. You probably already know, I'm sure your listeners know and viewers know already. Those big proteins, the albumin proteins, when they're swirling around in your bloodstream, they're very acidic. Now, what your body needs is a neutral environment, neutral blood. How does it neutralize them? It has to draw calcium out of the bones to neutralize the acidity of the albumin. As you're constantly drawing calcium out of your bones become weaker. So meat eaters, right the way through their lives, their bones become weaker. Lots of dairy in your diet, your bones become weaker. There are many tribes around the world. The Bantu tribe in Africa really don't touch anything to do with dairy or meat. Hardly ever have hip fractures. I'm taking an extreme example now, like the Eskimos, the Inuit, heavy in the meat, heavy in the blubber, heavy in the dairy. They start having hip fractures in their 40s and 50s. There is a correlation there.
Between dairy and bone fractures?
Yeah, high animal proteins and bone fractures, absolutely. The things that keep your bones healthy is a healthy plant-based diet and lots of activity, lots of intermittent pressure on the bones, walking, running. That's the thing that keeps us healthy in the bones.
It's not just that people don't know you can get calcium from green leafy vegetables and plant-based foods, but it's actually we consume foods that run counter to the evidence while saying they help.
Absolutely. And all those things such as sugar and caffeine and all those things, they leach your bones of all those nutrients that you need.
Mm-hmm. Children and a plant-based diet, is this something that you would recommend?
Yes, absolutely. There's no reason why a child shouldn't be on a plant-based diet. They, just like us, they develop. I mean, the one thing I would say, because people who are into the health and wellness, they're always talking about weight loss and not so much sugar and fat. That's not a big concern for most children if they're on a healthy plant-based diet and they're getting lots of activity. So they shouldn't really be calorie restricted in any way, but No, most of the children I know that are on happy, healthy, plant-based diets are doing fantastically well.
So one thing I wanted to ask about is athletes. Yes, they can thrive on a plant-based diet, but do they just need to eat the same foods they were eating before, but more calories, or do they need more soy or specific plant-based proteins?
They will need more calories, more beans, more nuts, even more plant-based protein, because they are doing so much more work. And then depending on whether they need long distance explosive work, that will depend on the little tweaks at the branches of their diet. But I know many athletes who just work on a happy plant-based diet. They don't need much tweaking at all.
You look like a fit guy. What
Yes.
do you do?
So I run pretty much 6 days a week, about 5K 6 days a week, and then I gym maybe 4 or 5 days a week, and then I'm walking all over the place. So on an average day, I'd run 5K, walk 5K, and then spend 45 minutes in the gym.
And what's the secret sauce to your diet? So breakfast, oatmeal, smoothie?
Good question. I never take breakfast. I never had breakfast. Often I would do 1 or 2 meals a day, and that would be in the late afternoon usually.
First meal?
Yeah, my first meal.
First meal, late afternoon.
Yeah, so I've done my exercise in the morning on an empty stomach. I'll do some of my work. My first meal usually is about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, and that's usually a substantial meal, but it's greens, beans, vegetables.
So you haven't had any calories today?
Not yet.
Wow, that's interesting.
No. I do it because I remember at work when I used to be in the hospital, the moment I had lunch at work, I just felt tired all the time. So I just like to have a clear mind when I'm doing sort of creative work. And then once I've got over 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when I'm going to start to wind down, then I'll eat. This just works for me. I don't recommend it for everybody, but it does work for me. And also, I do enjoy food. It also keeps you in shape.
Yeah.
Understand?
So second meal, what kind of time and what's your typical
If
evening meal?
So if I have 2 meals a day, I would have a meal more earlier in the day. Not first thing in the morning, breakfast, but my meals are not, I don't go along with the breakfast cereal stuff. I tend to have a salad for that breakfast or a soup or something like that. So a normal meal. I actually advise many of my clients to do that as well. If you want to reverse type 2 diabetes, forget about breakfast cereal and all that. Just have normal meals, 2 meals a day with a good fasting in between.
Do you ever get hungry in the evening?
I do. And if I do, I'll have a snack. I don't want to lead a miserable life.
Sure.
But I will take some nuts and fruit and whatever.
And lastly, what's your truth to the world?
My truth to the world is that, look, we're all here for a purpose. I believe God has given us something special in all of us. And what we must do is just take a bit of time, look inside and fulfill it.
Thank you very much. This is awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.